Welcome to the Recover Your Soul podcast. It's Rev Rachel, and I am so excited to have a return guest, Lauren Fay, who is another sober sister, another spiritual seeker, another amazing human being out here sharing this message of spirituality and hope and seeing addiction and recovery in a different light that is really about empowerment and health and healing and stepping into your wholeness. And she has a new book called Blurred Lines that I'm so excited about. And so I wanted to bring her on to share. So welcome, Lauren.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me back. I'm excited for our conversation today.
Last time we were together, you were the interview after I interviewed Marianne Williamson.
I know.
Fun, right?
I still think about that. It felt like such an honor to be in her energetic trail.
Right here, the wake
of Marianne Williamson. Yeah.
So if people hadn't heard that other interview, let's just start from scratch. One of the things that I love about what you offer in how you see it is that addiction and recovery is really an opening to understanding yourself on a spiritual level. So give us a little background on your story.
Well, so the story is addiction, and my addiction, what I like to classify as a soul in crisis. You know, of course we learn so much in hindsight, but when I look back at my addiction, I see it more as what I was drinking over, why I was drinking, the mistaken beliefs, the just the limiting thought processes that didn't make me feel very good, all of the ways that my heart was broken. I was drinking over that. And that's when I realized, it's not really actually about the substances. Not really about the alcohol. It's not really about the drugs. And so if we stop putting our focus on that and we start focusing on what it is that we're drinking over, that's the spiritual experience right there. And so my addiction was one of the ways I was healing through it was through Reiki and just alternative energetic healing practices, which really gets you in tune with your own body. And I am a firm believer that in sobriety, we bring our intuition back online. We get back in touch with our inner guidance system. And so that's how I see it as a spiritual experience, is knowing yourself probably better than you've ever known yourself before, because you've taken out anything that's blocking you from that information.
I agree 100%. I mean, I think about my own drinking, and I am blessed to not have the genetics that I think some people have an addiction. And I drank over the discomfort that I felt in my life and the spiritual crisis I was having, the lack of being able to live authentically from who I knew that I was. And when I got sober, I was able to access myself with such clarity. I don't even think about the drinking anymore. Like I never think about the drinking because it was never about the drinking. It was about who I was on the inside and remembering my wholeness, as I speak to and Recover Your Soul. So what was that moment? Because did you do 12-step as your lead in? What was the moment from that 12-step, which was my journey as well, to having had a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps, which is the 12-step? What was it that in the Reiki that opened you up to this new way of seeing it?
When I think about my turning point, my rock bottom being the switch that flipped, for me, it was a matter of life or death. It was, I had reached such a low in my mental and spiritual connectedness that I didn't want to be alive anymore. And it wasn't the substances that were going to take me down. So when I decided to get sober, it was basically a spiritual experience. I mean, there's really no other way to put it, where I just knew with the utmost amount of decisiveness and conviction that if I am going to be alive and free in my life, the substances have to go. And so then it just wasn't really about them anymore. So I did go into traditional 12-step because this was 8 years ago. That was really the only option I knew of at the time. I'm a very holistic woman, but I went into that traditional path, the treatment center, the rooms, and it gave me so many beautiful things. The connection, learning how to share your story and be received with love and without judgment. But it also almost put me up against a wall, not in a bad way, just in the opportunity to see that there's more than one way, which I think is beautiful, that we have options. And I didn't want it to be about the substances anymore. I didn't want to focus on the alcohol anymore. And so when the Reiki came in, that's when I really learned how to tune into my body, how to feel when my peace is disrupted, how to really understand that it's not just the alcohol I'm reaching for, it's the fact that I want to feel different. I don't want to feel these feelings. How do I make these feelings safe? And so that's where the energetic side really came in for me, was, like I said earlier, learning myself better than I ever had before. And I think that really is on the foundation of self-love. So the spiritual awakening for me was, if I am desperate for my own love, which I'm not experiencing while I'm on substances, and these are blocking me from my self-love, then why would I ingest the thing that's blocking me from the thing I want?
Mm-hmm.
And so it was so easy for me to give up the substances. I don't, like you said, I don't think about them anymore. It was, now how do I fall back in love with myself?
Mm-hmm.
That was the spiritual shift for me, was when I just stopped giving focus and attention to the substances and made it about something bigger than the liquid in the bottle.
One of the things that you talk about is making a decision.
Yes.
And I think about that in terms of my own journey, which is, yeah, there were definitely times when my addict like just had me consumed. I don't want to drink, but I'm still driving to the liquor store. I don't want to do these things, but I'm still irritated at my husband. I don't want to feel this way, but I'm still feeling this way.
Yeah.
But when I made a decision,
Yeah,
to save myself, it's like you mentioned earlier, like a switch flipped. Yeah. And so talk to me a little bit about how you see decision and how that plays into spirituality for you.
I see the decision as the most profound spiritual experience you can ever have in your life. There is nothing more soul nourishing than clarity and being decided, and letting all of that decision fatigue and the mental clutter and the back and forth just go. When you make a decision, you have a clear path forward. You might not know how you're going to do it, but you know which direction you're moving. I think that having a decision and making a decision, especially for sobriety, is required.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that it scares a lot of people. And I'm just like, no, it's actually going to be the most empowering moment of your life, because you can finally surrender the fight.
Mm-hmm.
You can finally just be done and know that you're going to be moving in a new direction. So I actually say this in my book, when I decided, like, nothing in this world could stand against this decided woman. Like, I was decided and nothing was going to get in my way. And that was the most ownership I've ever taken over anything in my life, ever. It was the most clear I'd ever been about anything in my life. And it was hard, and the journey was challenging, and I didn't know left from right, from up, from down, but I knew that I was going away from the substances. And that was all it took for those miracles to just keep popping up, right?
Yeah. And the decision, I think, that's so powerful is it's not a decision to not drink again. It's a decision to choose yourself.
Exactly.
And
Exactly.
which feel like two different things. But once you decide to choose yourself, why in the world would you choose something that is harming you to the level that it is, even if it's whispering to you that it's the solution?
Yeah.
You've decided to find a new solution.
Yeah. I don't believe that any of us, came, and I might have even said this on our last episode together. I don't believe that any of us came here to suffer, right? Like, we will learn our lessons through our suffering, but our soul mission isn't to suffer. Our soul mission is to live the life on the other side of the lessons. And so for me, if someone is using alcohol like myself, we're using it because we believe it's solving a problem, right? We believe it's helping. Otherwise, why else would we do it? Why else would we use it? We're not using it to intentionally inflict harm on ourselves. But once we understand that it is not a solution anymore, not an effective one, it works, but not the way you want it to work. It works not in the way that your heart and your soul want it to work for you. Then it's just like, okay, that tool stopped working. Let it go. On to the next. I mean, it's really that simple. Why would we put something in our bodies that isn't going to get us the result that we want? We wouldn't do that anywhere else in our life.
Right.
And so why are we doing that? Other, not to go into the whole addiction and how it hijacks the brain. We're definitely talking more on the soul level here. Mm-hmm. When we know that this isn't going to get me to where I want to be or how I want to feel, then I'm just not going to do it anymore. I'm going to find something else that's going to get me those results.
So the name of the book is Blurred Lines, which I think is interesting based on this conversation around addiction. So tell me what that means to you.
Blurred lines was really just the epitome of my life being one big confusing experience. I was raised in a very strict military family. And so I like to say I was raised within very strict lines. And I was always pushing up against the edges. My authentic self didn't fit in the box that I was put in. It wasn't a bad box. It just wasn't for me. Right. And so everything felt conflicting. Like I would do something that I thought was right, that was wrong, or vice versa. And I started to really lose touch with my own inner guidance. Making decisions for me was terrifying, and making mistakes felt catastrophic. So everything was just really blurred, and my clarity did not come through until my decision to get sober. And from that point forward, I was operating within very clear lines of what was acceptable to me and what was not acceptable to me, what I was willing to put in my body and around my body, and what I wasn't going to anymore. But the journey really was going through all of that blurred to get to the clarity.
And somebody else's lines,
And to get away from someone else's lines.
Right.
Mhm.
Yeah. So much of our life is spent on trying to fit the mold of somebody else's definition of who we're supposed to be. And as souls, I think we're being given this opportunity more and more and more in the times that we're in right now to let all of that go and be clear about who we are here to be, who we are here to be.
Yeah. It's very interesting that you say that, because this is one of the reasons why I actually felt some resistance to this 12-step program, quite honestly, was that it was set out lines to follow.
Mm-hmm.
And we know that there's suggestions, and the suggestions work. And I'm a firm believer that not all suggestions are going to work for everyone. So you need to find what works for you, da, da, da. But I was like, is this the little kid in me having a temper tantrum that I don't want to be told what to do? Or is it that I truly am just stepping into who I am, and I'm learning to trust myself again? And I can take suggestions, but I can also trust myself to know what is best for me. And that was a very confusing time of my life, because I wanted to do it right. I wanted to follow the rules. I wanted to check all the boxes. And yet I felt like there were things that didn't feel good for me still, even in my sobriety, that I was doing anyways. So within the lines and following other people's rules and guidance, it's still that permission to bring your inner guidance system back online, to bring your intuition back online, and just to really trust the wise person inside of you, because no one knows you better than you know yourself.
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And finding your own way is so essential. When you made that shift, and I think it's so beautiful, like you said earlier, that there's so many places where we can do recovery in different ways. And when you made that shift, what was the opening? Where were you getting the information? What was flooding in? Do you feel like you were for me, I feel like I was being given a lot of information, that it's taking me all these years to actually understand what was being given to me to be able to really get it. And it's pretty amazing that it was given to me that early.
Yeah.
But it's almost like I just continue to learn and grow. So where did you get it, and what was filling you up?
So many outside resources, of course, but also learning myself again. I've always been a highly sensitive and very empathic woman. I've always, we all have gifts, right? And I've had gifts that I just didn't understand. And I started to tap into those. Reiki helped open them up. But I was also just a student of, A Course in Miracles. I was a student of Marianne Williamson and Wayne Dyer and Debbie Ford and all of these great influencers and messengers that just helped me see the world differently.
Mm-hmm.
I was a student of a program called Choose Again, which is, hey, we form these limiting beliefs about ourselves, but you get to choose again. You don't have to live your life through the lens of those limiting beliefs. And that felt so incredibly empowering for me. And all of this was in I was reading these books before I got sober, but the Choose Again came into my sobriety journey in the first 4 months. And so right out of the gate, I was going a new direction. And I did AA for a year. I was still, going to the rooms and being amongst the other people with the shared struggle. And that was really beautiful for me. while also bringing in new language
Mhm.
and talking about, just turning to love and moving away from the fear-based messaging. And so I'm not sure if that exactly
It
answered your
does, and it really,
question, but
I mean, and it's so validating to me because that's the same thing I experienced. And Recover Your Soul's 9-step process is that you get to choose again, that you
yeah,
get to look at those limiting beliefs and those stories and those patterns, and you do not have to continue to live from them. That's the whole
you don't.
process that I teach.
I
And
mean, that
so
lights me up just here. It's like,
I
you
know.
don't have to. That makes me want to just jump up and down and celebrate. Like, how amazing that as human beings, we have choice. We have choice. And that is such a beautiful gift. And it's so underutilized.
Yeah.
So,
It's the whole life isn't happening to me, it's happening for me, it's happening with me, it's happening alongside of me that I can co-create with it. And
yeah.
the choice that we make, we continue to look on the outside wishing that everybody else on the outside would change and make it better
Yeah.
for us. But the only choice that you have is to be in your own experience.
Yeah.
So tell me a little bit about writing the book. What made you want to write a book? What was the call for it? How has that process been for you?
So in my sobriety, I've always known that I was going to write a book eventually. I came out as sober very, very quickly. I used my Instagram basically as an online blog. And so in the treatment center for 21 days, there was no access to the outside world. So my first public post was around 30 days sober. And I have just been writing about my sobriety journey ever since. And in this day and age now, with so much information, bless AI for giving us an abundance amount of information. What we're missing is the emotional connection and the storytelling.
Mhm.
And so I actually, in August of last year, started writing a coaching book. And I realized the book was taking this journey to memoir. And I was like, no, no, no. Where are you going? And I just trusted her path because all of my coaching lessons were being embedded in story. So I just took all of the coaching, talking to my reader points out and wrote it as memoir, trusting that my reader will pull whatever lessons they need from the book. And it took me a year to write it. And it was a very interesting experience because I'll be 8 years sober in January. And so I do feel as if I'm very much writing from the scars and not the open wounds. However, to go back into storytelling, I had to really put myself back in those moments and relive some of the most traumatic experiences of my life, for lack of a better word, just horrific, tragic moments of my life. And I wasn't re-traumatizing myself. I was just getting back into it enough so I could put it into words so my reader could feel it and experience it. And then doing my own second round of healing
Mhm.
of just feeling, quite honestly, the emotion that came up the most for me was really sad for the woman that suffered the way that she did. And then I always flipped it back to, but I wouldn't be who I am today if I didn't go through all of that. And that was just the point I had to keep, reiterating for myself was all of this was required for me to be who I am today, to have the mission I have today, to be of service the way I am today. And so now with the book, a reader can read it and they can hear my story and I can look them in the eyes and say, I know, me too. I was there too. I'm talking my talk, I'm walking my walk. And our stories might be different, but the shared experience is the same.
Ditto, 100%. As I'm working
Yes.
on my book. I mean, it is so interesting especially when you've done a lot of metaphysics and you've done the spiritual practice around forgiveness in the past, and it almost fades away. It's
Mhm.
almost like I don't access that. And so to go back and to step into those, but from this new perception,
Yeah.
from this ability to not be re-traumatized, to not be a victim in it, but to see it from a new lens and allow that second layer of healing is so powerful. I love how you describe that.
Yeah. I just, throughout the whole process, honestly, my guiding mantra was, can you just surrender one more layer? Can you
Mm.
just surrender one more layer? Because the first draft that came out, you never published the first draft. And there was pain, right? There was blame. And then as I went through the magical middle rewriting process where I really connected with the story, the humility came through and the forgiveness that I remembered that I had done and given and received came through. And it really came in, transformed into a book of sacred ownership
Mm.
and really also humbling myself and calling myself out, and really taking ownership of my role in things. My intention of the book was never to point blame and was not to be a victim, but I did struggle with ruffling feathers, and
Mm.
I did struggle with who am I going to upset, and I just kept reminding myself again that this is my story.
Mhm.
That this happened to me. Like, we're allowed to tell our story, and it was an act of bravery.
Mm.
And once you hit publish, there's no going back. That will live in the world forever. So that was an act of bravery for sure.
Incredibly courageous. And our experience of how we felt it is uniquely ours.
Yes.
So I think we're getting more and more clarity all the time to be able to say, I'm not saying this is what happened for everyone. I'm saying this is what happened for me. And
Mhm.
your courageous act to tell the story that happened to you allows other people to be able to tell their story, whether they do it in a book or just in their own heart, of
Yeah.
what happened to them. And we can't heal unless we own those parts of ourselves.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Agreed. Yes. Thank you for saying that.
So what shifted in it? Is there anything that layer, the willingness, the surrender, one more layer?
Mhm.
How has that changed who you are today? What's the gift that you've received from it there?
I've always considered myself, no pun intended, to be an open book. I've been very vocal about my journey from the beginning, but I wrote with such rawness and exposure and vulnerability that there's really nothing left. And so what shifted for me was remembering that my life was made up of secrets. My addiction was fueled by secrets. My wanting to not be alive was everything was a secret. And now I've published a book and I don't have any secrets anymore.
Mm.
And it's oddly freeing. It's kind of terrifying to the ego, of course, but it's oddly freeing to just be like, it is all out there, and if there's any lingering shame, I get to heal through that. If there's any lingering stigmas, I get to heal through that. And it's just another opportunity, we say, to surrender one more layer, but to heal one more layer so that every day I'm just more and more and more authentically Lauren.
And how does that feel?
It's, I think maybe I'm still digesting that it actually happened. But it feels amazing. And one specific example I can provide to show you how it feels is it's the most honest conversation I've ever had with my parents.
Mm.
And so I wrote this book and it occurred to me, oh my gosh, they don't know a lot of these things because, again, my life was secrets. And so I sat them down and I just told them, hey, these are stories that are in my book and I want you to hear from it. I want you to hear about it from me first. Right. And after that, there were tears and hugs and it was like they understood me for the first time, probably better than they ever have in their lives. I understood them. And it just felt yes, it was opening up conversations that were necessary to have in my life. So
Which goes so far into the belief systems that we can't ruffle the feathers, that will, that will be unloved, will be rejected, will be abandoned.
Mhm.
And maybe some people will make a decision on their own that they didn't like it, but it's very different than actually having those real conversations. Did you
Yeah,
have anybody who did reject it or has come back and said that they have a different feeling about it?
not yet.
Hmm.
I'm sure that will happen. Um, I was asking myself before I hit published if I had a thick enough skin for any of the negative pushback that might come. And then I realized it wasn't about having a thick skin, that all energy gets to just move through me, and the energy that's for me will land, and the energy that's not for me will continue to flow by. And everyone gets to have their opinions, but it's my story, and I'm not going to get in trouble for my story, right? The feedback has been incredibly, incredibly amazing. People are loving the book. It's making them feel things. It's making them think about things differently. And that feels really good. It does. It feels really good. And I'm sure there will be people who don't like it. And that's just
Can't
the way
please
it's going to
everybody.
go. We
Right.
can't please everyone. Yeah. People pleasing was one of the reasons I drank.
Hmm.
So that was a big thing that came up.
So when you look at the journey you've been through, and a lot of the people that listen to this podcast or in this community have somebody in their life who's either actively struggling with addiction or in and out of their own recovery journey.
Yeah.
And when you really feel the empowerment about how being an addict, and if we're all addicts, if we're honest, right? But, we're looking at sort of this more destructive addiction that affects other people. Being
Hmm.
an addict, and that it is this opportunity for us to step into ourselves in a way. And the more that we're holding back, trying to keep them or control them, did you have people who were trying to control your journey or play a role in it that you needed to have this experience all on your own that will give people hope to say you can release it,
Yeah.
trust that whatever's right for that person will unfold?
Yeah, I didn't have a whole lot of intervention in my addiction because, again, no one actually knew how bad it really was.
Mm.
You could tell an addict thinks they're hiding it really well, but there's always signs, right? So, for instance, my family could tell I was drinking more than other people at the dinner party, etc. They knew I was very unhappy and depressed, but there were big life events happening that would support having depression. So it was kind of very blurry, right? So when I decided to get sober, my ego was anticipating control, was anticipating pushback, was anticipating someone else coming in and maybe telling me, no, you're not that bad. Stigma too big. Don't go to a treatment center. None of that happened, but I thought maybe it would. And I literally kept everyone at an arm's length. I was like, I'm doing this. Don't ask me questions. And in hindsight, I'm like, there was such an opportunity to let love in
Mm.
that I didn't let love in. And they never stopped. For instance, at the treatment center, every single day, my parents mailed me a card. I had 21 cards on my wall on the day that I left. Um, so as far as were people trying to control me, I they were so proud of me for making this decision that really they just kind of were like, she knows what she's doing. You know,
Mhm.
we don't have to, there's nothing we can do. And plus, they were also told, of course, every addict has to go on their own journey. Um, but I think they were just like, okay, she's got it. And we're just here to love her. So not a whole lot of control. Yeah.
But I love the reflection about allowing yourself to let the love in and the support in, because so often we feel like we have to do it all on our own and we're
Yeah.
trying to prove ourselves and do all of those things. And yet, as somebody who loves addicts, who has adult kids who are addicts and a husband who's an addict, and my sober date's just a month after yours, which I
Yeah.
always loved that we're
I
so
know. I do
right
love that
aligned with
too.
each other. But I just see us each in our own experiences. And the more that we can just offer love and support to each other to have whatever the experience is and stop trying to run the show for them, there's
Yeah.
so much more opportunity for there to be success because they're not having to deal with the shame that we're
Mhm.
inflicting on them in the midst of it. So I love that you were getting cards. It's beautiful.
What happened after the treatment center, though, was very interesting. And it's actually a conversation that my parents and I are going to have again. I bring them up a lot because they were my immediate people right there for me. But once they realized, okay, she's made this decision to be sober, we have to let her go on her own journey. There was never a retraction of love, but there was almost a retraction of involvement, fear of what if we say the wrong thing.
Mm.
They were basically taking responsibility for my sobriety and what if we mess it up? And so I felt like I was the ticking time bomb and I didn't like feeling that way because I knew it wasn't true, but that was their healing journey, right?
Mm.
They were trying to figure out how to navigate something they'd never navigated before. And as a result, it actually caused a disconnect between us. And it was heartbreaking because more than anything, connection is required,
Mhm.
but it was really just confusion on what if we say the wrong thing or what if we do the wrong thing? And it was just overall a really confusing time. But there was never any shortage of love.
Did they
Yeah.
do Al-Anon or do any other recovery programs on their own?
They did that. I'm not sure how much they did after the treatment center, but at the treatment center, there was 3 days where family could come and they took classes on their own. And, you know, I know my dad didn't connect with it. And I think he felt like he was being told to put distance between him and his addict daughter. And I know he wanted more than anything to just come in close. And so I think overall, whatever the messaging was, it just caused confusion. And it
I
was something that we had to work through.
Yeah, that's the piece that I'm really like kind of clicking into is I think that there are some messages that are really around letting, you've got to let them have their experience, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you don't have connection. Letting somebody have their experience doesn't mean that you aren't present. It means that you are present with your hands back and holding space for them. And that is a blurry line.
It really
It
is.
is a really blurry line, but I think that more
Yeah.
than ever, there's more messaging about, and I hope that in my podcast and Recover Your Soul in the community that I'm teaching, that I'm giving more information about how to be present in a way that doesn't mean that you kind of dismiss yourself from their lives and say, well, when you've got it all figured out, come back around and I can't wait to see what happened.
Yeah.
Because that doesn't, sometimes you got to do that, but that's
Yeah.
not always, how that works.
Yeah. This is just a perfect example of there's more than one way,
Mhm.
right? And it's not going to be a perfect model or mold for everyone because there are going to be situations where the person has to put distance between themselves for their own sovereignty, for their own boundaries and peace. And then there's going to be times where you go in and it's just at the end of the day, it's going to be a unique, figuring it out between the external and the addict and how the energies are going to commingle and how the space is going to commingle. And if we believe that there's only one way, it would be very detrimental.
Yeah.
And so I just love that there's this open conversation and permission to have trial and error, try one way. If it doesn't work, try a new way. That's why there's so many different tools in our tool bag that we get to reach for.
Absolutely. And you
Yeah.
just used the word sovereignty, which I've been using a lot lately. So tell me about how you see that as part of your model and what has been your healing.
I really just, for me personally, it's this utmost amount of respect for myself, who I am in human form, who I am in spiritual form, what I'm here to give, the love that is the truth that guides everything, understanding that fear is required because duality is necessary, but that it's not always the truth, that it can just be a lens to ask very curious questions. Sovereignty to me is just really being free to be me and to love every part of me. The parts that were messy, the parts that were hard, the parts that are beautiful and shiny and glittery. So it means so much to me. But yeah, I use the word a lot too,
Yeah,
and
I love that
just
word.
really coming back to yourself.
Hmm.
Hmm.
And you mentioned before we started recording that you did a PS at the end of the book, because I think that sometimes people think, okay, we're going to do this work and then everything's going to be shiny and perfect and there'll be no problems and I'm going to come out the other side and there'll be some sort of fairy tale, and that's not true.
Yeah.
So through your recovery, we're both, coming up on our 8 years.
Hmm.
How have you been able to walk through life that continues to be lifey, that continues to give challenge and be present in a way that you don't have to escape from?
What a beautiful question. And that is actually exactly what the PS statement encompasses. And just to backtrack a little bit on the structure of the book, there's two parts. And so part one is the downward spiral, and part two I call the reclamation of power, but it's really the first year of sobriety. And I wanted it to be very clear to readers that it's not all rainbows and butterflies, that it is confusing, that it is messy, that it's going to be high highs and low lows and in betweens. And so I was very real about what that first year, was like. Because at some point the book has to end, right? So I just wrote about the first year. But in the PS statement, I talked to my reader about what I went through while writing the book. And while writing the book, I experienced two back-to-back miscarriages.
Mm.
I also lost my beloved dog, who is a key character in the book and who was the reason I'm alive. He is the reason I'm alive today. And that all happened in 4 months.
Mm.
And so what I was showing the reader is that my sobriety is not conditional on life being easy or gentle or fair, but that my sobriety is the sacred decision I made for myself to show up fully as a sober woman, regardless of what life presents to me. And that if I don't drink the alcohol, like I might feel powerless to these situations, and I'm going to learn how to navigate them. And I'm going to learn that I can survive big emotions. But if I don't invite in the alcohol, I never have to feel powerless to alcohol ever again.
Mhm.
And so that's out of the equation. So I just really wanted them to see that through it all, I continue to show up to write my story, because the whole point of the book is hopefully it will change someone else's story.
Mhm.
And that's the PS statement.
I love that, because I do think that our ability to continue to be present in our life with these new tools does mean that we have the ability to feel the big emotions, to not collapse, to not react in negative ways, to not shut down, to not use all the tools that we thought were the only way, and to choose again.
And to choose again,
To choose
I
again.
say, yeah, I say in the PS statement, in my almost 8 years of sobriety, there hasn't been a single life event that I've been willing to turn my sobriety over to.
Mhm.
And if any of them were to have been good enough reasons, it would have been those three.
Right.
Just mostly my dog, to be honest, because he was my child, 11 and a half years. So it was just showing that that was hands down the biggest could have been a reason to drink experience. And it's still, I wasn't willing to turn my sobriety over to that either. Plus, I didn't want to dishonor any of those lives by drinking over their deaths.
Right.
There's so many beautiful ways to honor someone's life, and drinking over it, I would not say makes the top of the list.
Well, I can't wait to
Yeah.
continue to see how the book touches lives, and
Thank you.
is another tool, another affirmation of the possibility of taking what feels like something that's bad and changing it completely, to see that it's an opportunity to totally learn who you are and come out the other side. And I too needed exactly what I went through to be who I am today. And
Yeah.
so I'm grateful for every experience, every single one.
Same. I don't want to live them again, but I am so grateful that I had them. It's just so true. Life is an accumulation of decisions and experiences, and here we are. And if you don't like where you are, then like you just said, we get to choose again.
Get to choose again.
Yeah.
So tell us about how they find Lauren, and your book is on Amazon and all the things, but
Yes.
how do we learn more about you?
The best way to find me, to find the book, is to go to blurredlinesbook.com. From there, it'll link you to the Amazon. It'll also link you to more about me and what I offer. So blurredlinesbook.com is the best way to start. And then for my Instagram presence, it is at Lauren Fay Coaching.
Perfect. Thank you so much for joining me today. I'm so excited to share this with everybody. And I just am so grateful to have these connections with these other powerful, spiritually fit, amazing, sober women, that we can continue to share this experience and journey with others who are ready.
I agree. And again, thank you for having the platform to share our stories, to share our voice, and just very thrilled that our audiences get to hear these messages.
Me too. Me too. Until next time, namaste.
Namaste.